Okay, it's coming out. It's Friday. It's the end of the 4th week of this evaporating out in the ambient temperature. I think it's going to shrink a little bit more. It is getting near the point of being dry. It could be close to being dry. I'll give it another couple of days since I'm waiting for the electroplating. I found these sponges, which are good, but the size of them, they're too small. They're 50 by 20 by 30. They're called stipple sponges. So I cut this one in half. You take it out here. Now that would be the perfect sort of sponge to electroplate. But the size, I might try, see how it's flexing back where I sort of cut it through the center. I might super glue along that edge and stick them together and see if I can get them to being that wide. As you can see, really hard to find this sort of sponge with chorus at large size. So this would be the perfect size. It's just plastic. It's used for makeup and stuff. So we could electroplate that with nickel quite well, and that would give us lots of surface area. Well, the nickel oxyhydroxide's finally dry. Shrunk down in volume by heaps. Gonna go weigh it up in a minute. So maybe 30 grams. We'll see. It's taken 4 weeks to get to dry in ambient outside weather. It's around about 27 degrees a day. So it's taken a while actually. As you could tell, the volume of it was right up near the 2 cup mark and slowly dropped down and shrunk into this. Okay, weighing in the nickel oxyhydroxide, so the yield's not that great. 33.7 grams. I started off with 80 grams of nickel sulfate and 80 grams of sodium hydroxide to form the nickel hydroxide, and I think it was 100 mils of bleach. Might have been more. You got to look at the video. I forgot. So while that stuff was drying, I made up some plates, electroplating them. These are the carbon felts, which have been quite conductive. So over that distance, we're like depends how hard you press, 0.7. And again, a little bit less, depends, it went through maybe. Yeah, there we go, 0.6. I've got these ones soaking. These ones, see how it's tarnished? I was using too much amperage and the nickel goes black. Still conductive there though. So these, and these are very fragile, you can crush them. These ones are going to be the negative one. I'm going to put 2 on each negative plate and one of these on the positive, 2 of these on the positive side, both one side, using that cell setup. This is one I'm trying to coat just straight over the carbon. See, it's building up that stuff. Doesn't do that when you do the copper plating. I'll have to stick up the voltage to 4.9. It's only putting in 50 milliamps. And for some reason it always wants to bend that thing. So I think it's producing nickel oxide, maybe. Probably don't want that in there like that. So I'm going to use cellulose acetate as the binder. I'm thinking about 6 grams of this on each one of these, so we'll have 12 grams of the nickel oxyhydroxide, and I'll put 4 grams of the carbon I made with using the nickel sulfate in the carbon to graphitize it, mixed with this, mixed in cellulose acetate and poured throughout this. These are being washed because they build up salt. I've had them soaking and changed the water daily for about 3 weeks. There's some other ones I made. So I made 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, well 9 really. 9 electrode plated cells in 4 weeks. Part-time-ish, whenever I can get time. Got these down to 8 hours. 4 hours copper plating, both sides, either side. And then 4 hours of nickel plating. These ones are down to 16 hours using nickel on one side and nickel on the other side, so it's double plating. So that cut the time down to half, and the results aren't too bad, they're still good. You can still see the fibre. Super glue does join these this sponge together, so I'm going to make a bigger pad. This one I cut down the middle, but I might just cut them all through the middle and see how it's bowed a bit from the tension of bending. So I'll cut them in half and then join them and make a flat plate around about that big as well. So it will take 1, 2, 3 of them probably to make that size pad, cut in half. And then that will be, that's the size of them there, so that should fit nicely. So I'm getting ready. Once this is dry, that's still wet, so probably take the rest of the day to dry that out. And I'll mix up some of this. 4 grams of the carbon. I think because it's 10 grams, I need 3 grams of the binder cellulose acetate. I've worked it out that 1 gram of the 1 gram of carbon, and you need 0.3 grams of cellulose acetate makes a good binder ratio from previous experiments. So looking forward to this. It's been a long wait. Been like I don't know, probably over 5 weeks or more. So fingers crossed. The separator on the positive one's going to be the microporous overalls, as the other cell was. And a bit of luck, we get some surface area on the zinc side, because having a flat plate, it probably doesn't matter if you layer up the zinc, that's still not adding to the surface area as much as something like that would. So it's more like the spread and coating around every part of that, which will give us the surface area compared to plating on a flat plate and raising it with lots of zinc. So the only tricky part here is going to be, do I have to plate the zinc first onto that stuff? Because the nickel oxyhydroxide is in its charged state, I guess, being nickel oxyhydroxide. So I'll have a think about that. I might have to run these 2 plates and one of the other little plates as just a temporary measure to charge up some of the zinc. So I'll think about doing that. Probably will, but I'll see. Rightio, I ground up the nickel oxyhydroxide and some this carbon. I changed the ratio amount. It's now 14 grams of nickel oxyhydroxide and 6 grams of this carbon. I use the outer, the shiny stuff. This carbon's that redhead briquettes crushed up, mixed with cornstarch and nickel sulfate. in the water for the cornstarch and then bound together and refurnace. So it's sort of graphitized with a metal salt as the catalyst. So I've got that in here. Grinding it out. See that silver ring? Looks like graphite, but it's the nickel form that. And with the multimeters just in there, on the 2 million ohms, you get about 1 million ohms out of there in resistance, just coated on that. I've tried these pads, but the octolite still seems to be coming through. Even though they've been washed and soaked in water, they've still turned sort of a paley green. One's got a big band around it. And more on that side. So these will be soaked in acetone to keep them wet, because when you're applying a cellulose acetate to this sort of substance, it just sucks it dry instantly, so you've got to moisten this. I'll be using, because there's 20 grams, well, 19.9 grams of total active material. Scales are dodgy. Alright, zeroed it out, I think. Okay, we got 19.9, so I'm going to put half on each of these. It will soak through, hopefully soaks through enough that it fills up those. I think 10 grams per side will be okay without much wastage. Hopefully it goes all on there perfectly. So I'll mix this up ready and apply the binder and everything, and you'll see the results in a while. Okay, I got 9.98 there. And 9.97 over on this one. So I'll mix them up with 0.3 grams of binder per batch. I'll do each batch separately instead of having a mass batch and trying to get it done really quickly and stuffing it up. I'll be spooning it on there to this surface. Right, just finished coating it as good as I could, some lumpy bits. That's the wastage, as it falls through the felt. Some spots aren't coated properly. Cellulose acetate as a binder really dries quickly. So we got around about most of our 9.9 grams on both of these. Should be alright just to see. Right, that's one part of the cell done. That will be the positive side. Righty, I'm back. I've got 2 of the rubber mattings coated with nickel on the outer cells, which are the negative cells. I've got them held there with 3 rubber bands, equally spaced. And same with the center one. I've got the microporous overalls and 3 rubber bands and the 2 carbon felts on either side of the plastic collector here. For some reason we got 0 voltage. Oh well, I know the reason. I checked the voltage of the cell, and saying the 2 outer ones are positive, so it's a 0.1. It's negative 0.1 at the moment, but as soon as we put a charge to the cell, it should just start plating zinc onto those 2 or 4 pads, I should say. We'll do 100 milliamps. Cut off voltage 0.5 and put the voltage up for a charge to about 2. Alright, connecting. Well, we'll do a monitor. I'll be able to charge it for probably about 2 hours, 3 hours maybe. Okay, connecting charge. First test for the cell. It's been soaking. Whoa. So 2 volts pumps in 3 amps and dropping. So it's been soaking, I should say, for an hour. Probably needs 24 hours. It's the same electrolyte as we had last time. I just topped it up with a bit too much water actually. I topped it up before I put the center cell in, which displaced a heap of it. Didn't spill, but could have been a bit lower. So voltage going through the data logger is 1.5. We're at 2 there. 2.59, 2.69 over on the data logger. So the voltage is actually increasing, so fingers crossed that the cell works. A little bit of work went into that cell, but it was just plating, so it's not like real work. I should just say time went into it. Alright, I'll get back. The cell's been uncharged for 3 hours and 6 minutes. Still hasn't reached 2 volts up there. It's still climbing there. So for now we're going to test it. So disconnecting the charge. The cell's at 1.5. This one ends around. Okay, starting 100 milliamp test. Alright, the voltage didn't drop there. That's dropping now. Maybe working okay. Only the first charge and everything might not be dampened yet inside the cell. Alright, I'll be back. Cell's been running for 1 hour and 42 minutes. It's holding 0.7, but I'm going to stop it at the moment and continue tomorrow. Okay, we'll just see what the bounce back is. It's a bit slowish. Alright, I'll check it out tomorrow and give it a few more charges and see where we are. Second charge on the battery, 8 hours on charge. Voltage never reached 2 volts. 2 volts on the charger, only 1.9 over there. So I'll disconnect that from the charge. Okay, starting a 100 milliamp discharge. Okay, back with the second run. 3 hours and 19 minutes, 333 milliamp hours to 65 milliwatt hours, so average. I'll keep charging and discharging it and see what happens. Okay, getting ready to make a new cell. 14 grams of the nickel oxyhydroxide and just over 6 grams of feather carbon this time. It takes up a lot of bulk, 6 grams. So I'll mix both of these. I'm going to ball mill these up.
for a couple of days. This one's still running. This is the third charge, not including the two on the video already. So it's around about the same. 337, 334 milliamp hours, and today it had a 4.5 hour charge, and holding lower voltage though, but it's still going good. There's no cell discoloration. And we're going to back the binder off to 2 grams for 10 grams of carbon. Okay, got some 40mm copper tape this time. So you punch the hole through after putting the first layer down and fold it around there. And then when you wrap that side around, you punch it back through and do the same. The hardest part of the electrode is getting this on here neatly. I need to replace the 2 negative electrodes on the cell, which are made out of that original plastic. The left one I know is starting to split down at the bottom of the cell. The cell's, that's its 10th charge now going on. The little results aren't too bad. We're around about 300 milliamp hours. That's the milliamp hour line. So we did, with a 6-hour charge there, we got 368 milliamp hours and 304 milliwatt hours on the 9th charge. I did a 400 milliamp run here. We only went for 43 minutes though, but we did get 291 and 226 milliwatt hours from a 400 milliamp run, which ain't too bad for the cell. There's no degrading yet, but that left side cell at the bottom is broken. It was all puffed up before I started. I thought it would hold because it didn't tear like this one, but it's starting to tear at the bottom, so I'm not sure which, on this facing side, the plating side, how damaged it is. And same with the other negative cell, is the same, that old material which the ink doesn't stick to. That could be a bio material, not a plastic, because it's pretty hard and you cut it with the grinder and it doesn't melt. It just powders off. So this new plastic works, it's holding up and the ink sticks to it. If you don't have any of the ink, don't be afraid to make some, because my homemade ink, I can get it down to about 80 ohms over that area, which is okay for plating. You can just turn up the voltage a bit and get extra voltage going through the cell to plate over your graphite, and probably an enamel paint. No, an acrylic paint I think would work best. Mixed in with graphite, really fine graphite, and get the right mix, and you'll probably be able to make your coating, since we're not using the ink really as a, we're just using it as a base to coat over. So I take all the shine off of the plastic first, and then you've got to clean these down with acetone, or the ink doesn't stick onto it. There's a greasy film over it. And you get little wrinkles, but you can push them out. So I'm going to keep charging this cell until these are ready. This is going to be a few weeks before I can actually, because it takes a while to plate them. You've got to first copper plate them all. When you copper plate it, you can stick it right in. So you want to copper plate the hole as well. And that fills up all the little holes which we've generated and makes a good contact. And then nickel plate it. I'm not sure if my nickel plating is getting contaminated, but see, they're coming out black now, funny colour, and green bits are coming out. I'm washing them down. No luck at gluing them together yet with super glue, so I'm going to have to try to put a plate on a hot plate and melt them and join them together, because that would make a good negative side cell for surface area. So I'll still achieve that, I think. Alright, I'll get back.
Okay, I thought I'd weigh the wastage from the nickel oxyhydroxide and carbon mix. So we're about 3.7 grams of wasted material. So that makes it about 14 grams or so actually on the positive plates of the cell. It was well mixed, so that should be a mix of the carbon, which was that carbon, and nickel oxyhydroxide. After doing the mesh, the rubber matting, I had to filter my nickel acetate solution, and I got all this out of it. It forms on the boundary layer of the electrolyte and the air when doing those rubber mats. So it may be nickel oxide. I'm not sure if it's nickel hydroxide. Could be. Might get a bit out and let it dry and mix it up with some bleach and see if it turns black. That might tell us if it's nickel hydroxide. But it actually created a heavy yield. Okay, I've got some time. I've painted some the new plastic to replace the negative electrodes. I hand painted these ones, so they come up alright. You're just got to give them 2 coats. I've got one in the copper compound now. It's copper sulfate. I've got 2 electrodes for the copper, and we're drawing around about 1.3 volts and 390 milliamps. So I'll coat that up really well with copper first. I've been testing the cell out while I've been waiting. This is the 19th charge of the cell. It's actually performing okay. We're around about, started off on the first charge, 337 milliamp hours, and as you followed the milliamp hour way. And one of these charges here, I did a 50 milliamp charge, got 396 milliamp hours with a 50 milliamp load. And I did a 400 milliamp load test, ran for 43 minutes on 400 milliamps and 291 milliamp hours. And then I did some 7.5 hour charge, got 394 milliamp hours, 3 hours and 56 minute runtime. That's runtime. I did an hour and 27 minutes at 100 milliamps, got 390. So somewhere between 5 hours and 7 hours is a reasonable charge on the cell. The negative plate here is the leftover old plastic. It's starting to flake off, I noticed at the bottom on that side. I haven't checked that side, it's too hard to get in there and disturb it. Now, the separator seems to be holding up well on the positive side, and everything seems to be still intact. So I'll get to charge 20 sometime tomorrow or whenever, and I'll post an update. This is the 22nd run of the cell for it's 4 hour runtime, 406 milliamp hours, 348 milliwatt hours with a 8 hour charge, and the cells are just spread out like that, not really close to each other. We could probably get better performance if we move them closer, but that's good enough for a test. Oops. I've had the results here. As you can see, the 7.5 hour charge time, that's the charge time column. And milliamp hours average, that's the run time.
average voltage, milliamp hours, milliwatt hours, and the load column. And for the last couple there, for the charge times, we're sort of slowly increasing each charge. It did start off at 2.5 hour charge. We got 3 hours and 22 minutes, average voltage 0.8, and 339 milliamp hours. So the cell's actually increasing, so I'll keep charging. And I'll get back. I want to try to get 100 charges, but that's going to be 100 days time. Well, 80 days now, because we're at 22 charges, one a day. Okay, this is the 32nd charge on the cell. 32 days I've been charging and discharging. It's now holding 1 volt for an hour. It's at an hour and 9 minutes. It tops out at 400 milliamp hours. So it's looking good. I've been making some new cells, or some electrodes. I had to change my nickel acetate. That one down there, see it's turned black and yucky looking. I think it's either copper contamination from copper plating here. I'm copper plating the second one now. Around about 440 milliamps going through it. This is a weaker solution of nickel acetate. I only put like that much vinegar at the bottom, and the rest is water and a little smidgen of salt. Not too much salt, and you get a sort of nice looking coating. Around about 100 milliamps goes through there for, I did it for 10 hours, so that's well coated. That one I was trying to sand down, and I pressed too hard here and snapped along there, like the plating snapped, so I just chucked it out. So you can't bend them because the stuff's brittle and it just snaps. But if you don't bend them, they're good. This one will probably need a top up of some water, as the levels dropped a bit. But I haven't really moved it. And there's the little chart. Milliamp column is there. Milliwatt hours is there. It's around about, this charge was 6 hours and 30 minutes. The charge before it was 640, and we got 4 hours and 11 minute run time. The average voltage is going up, that's at 0.9. If you look at that column, it's pretty stable. And our milliamps sort of vary a bit, but yesterday's run was 419 milliamp hours and 379 milliwatt hours, which ain't too bad. It's increasing, it's not decreasing. I'm thinking about doing 100 charges before I get this video back online, just to see how it goes. That's another 70 days away. One a day I can do. Yeah, I'll get back. This is the 40th run on the cell. It was charged for 8 hours, and we're at 500 milliamp hours, 475 milliwatt hours. It's still increasing in its power. Increases every charge around about 20 milliamps. And the average voltage is going up to 0.95. And the bounce back, tomorrow morning it will be probably like 0.8 something. A bit less than that, but not past 8. So the cell's actually looking good. I'm working on a new design using this copper mesh stuff. I've plated that one. The only thing with plating this took 40 hours to plate, but I first chose 100 milliamps to put through the cell, and it just creates bubbles. I think this one's been in here for about 9 hours or more, and it's almost completed. See those bubbles? When you have a higher amperage, it covers it in bubbles and it doesn't plate. So this is much better at 70 milliamps for that type of mesh. I've folded it over 4 times, so it's completely coated in nickel. That may increase the surface area of the batteries. So I'm still going to charge it, keep charging until I get to 100. So there's been 40 days on charge and discharge. Okay, back. This is the 50th charge of the cell. I added some liquid today. It's been, I only added about 30 ml to it. It just sits like that. It took 2 weeks to drop down in level in the liquid. Okay, so it's been on charge at 2.5 volts for 6.5 hours. It probably only needs 5.5 or 6, but due to work and stuff, the voltage is holding a lot higher, but not when we connect the load. It self-discharges a fair bit because of the potassium hydroxide's going to dissolve the zinc. So starting our run. What happened? Oh, yeah, okay. Got to swap the other ends of the data logger over. That's trying to run a load from the charging end. Right, connected it up. Here we go. Starting test. There we go. So you have to swap the leads on the data logger when you charge it. So when charging, you use these ones, and when discharging, you use those two there as inputs, or outputs and inputs. Just had to turn the coffee off. So it's at 1.9 for a minute. It drops down rapidly to about 1.2 and then it holds for a while. So what's happened over the 50 charges? I have various runtime for charges. The real noticeable difference is the average voltage has started to increase over the time, and we're at now a level of 0.9 for our 5-hour run. Sometimes it runs for 5 hours and 23 minutes, 5 hours and 16, 5 hours and 9, 5 hours and 5 on the 42nd charge. Before that, on the 39th, after the, I think 40, it started running at 500 milliamp hours and milliwatts, and slowly the milliwatts also went up. Now we're also up at 500 milliwatt hours, and 523 was last night's run. Should be somewhere around here and here for the cell. So I'm pretty happy with the cell's capabilities. We could probably get a higher voltage by putting those cells a bit closer. We're just sitting there. These are still the old plastics. I'm going to replace them. Next version of this cell is going to have this copper stuff. I've plated it with nickel. It took 40 hours on low milliamps to plate all of that. So I'm gonna, it's stacked, there's 4 layers. I have some new electrodes I've coated. Got some on the go, one failed again. So I'm having trouble with my nickel acetate. Keeps turning black after about 40 hours of plating. think it's from the copper plating. The vinegar must really eat out of it, because this one was in there at 20 milliamps overnight, and then it dropped right down for some reason, and in the morning the copper was removed and there was only a little bit of plating of nickel. So you have to have about 100 milliamps or so, or 80, to beat the dissolving of the copper. So I'll get back when this finishes, and I'll probably post this video because I want to change over those negative pads to that new version. I'll keep the positive cell because that's the good plastic. Cell's been running for 33 minutes, holding 1.222. One hour and 18 minutes. Alright, the 50th run is complete. 5 hours and 42 minutes. 570 milliamp hours and 555 milliwatt hours. I didn't think the cell had any extra in it, but it seems to be still increasing. Or on this run it did anyway. Maybe because I topped it up with some extra water and increased the surface area by raising that liquid to the top of the plate. It could probably go a little bit higher, the liquid that is. If we go to the top of these things, there'll probably be a little bit more in there. Well, I was thinking about replacing the plates with the copper coated nickel mesh now. Well, I don't know. The voltage, this ran out, I don't know, about a few hours ago. I just got home. So the voltage bounce back is 0.92. Tomorrow morning it's normally around 0.84 or something. So there's probably still some zinc left on the plates, and it slowly dissolves completely off by the morning or so. Well, I'll post this update, I think, and well, part of me wants to keep that going, but I want to test those other ones too. Leave your comments about it. I won't touch it for another week. I'll keep charging. I've got to work anyway this week, so I'll be quite busy. Alright, I hope you enjoy this. This cell's probably worth building, because 500 of these, I mean 1,000 of these cells would be 500 amp hours. And it would be less than, I say around about, I don't know, $150, not even that. You'd still have spare materials, just hours in the plating, which you got to worry about. But if you just set up a solar panel and plate them outside, worth it. Alright, thanks for watching. Okay, this is the 57th charge of the cell. Today's run's going to be a 200 milliamp hour test, and it's been charged for 6.5 hours. Okay. So the salt's starting to come out of the cell, as you can see, just from, I don't know, climbing up the side and over the edge. So the electrolyte may be getting weaker because it's hanging out down there. It needs to clean up. I'm getting ready to drop that cell and replace it with the 2 nickel coated meshes and a fresh 2 set of negative cells to replace those old ones, which are from the last experiment. So it's still holding 1.8 at 200 milliamps, almost a minute. Alright, we'll get back when this one's finished. Okay, so at
200 milliamp load, the cell runs for 2 hours and 23 minutes, which is 478 milliamp hours and 452 milliwatt hours. But the voltage is higher on its recovery. It normally sits around 0.9. So it's got a similar sort of discharge curve, a little bit different here in this section. I think this is normally a bit longer in the final stages. Its average voltage is down. It's normally 0.99, so it's 0.95 on this run. So I'll try again tomorrow. I'm at work, so I'll have a longer charge, and I might try a heavier load. Alright, until then. Okay, the results from a 7.5 hour charge for a 200 milliamp load, 538 milliamp hours, 499 milliwatt hours. So with a heavier draw, the 7.5 hour charge sort of did a better job than yesterday's run. So it's still up near the 500 milliamp hours, which is good. It ran for 2 hours and 41 minutes this time. Yesterday's was 2 hours and 23 on a 6.5 hour, so an hour extra charge made the difference. $59 charges on the cell, 7.5 hour charge. Going to try a 400 milliamp load test today, just to stress the cell out a bit. Starting test now. Okay, alright, holding 400 milliamps okay. It may get about an hour, or just over an hour at this rate. Looks like it's coping okay. It's 1.8, dropping fast there. Alright, I'll get back. Alright, back. 55 minutes on that run for 400 milliamp hours. 400 milliamps as the load. Average voltage has gone down to 0.87, 368 milliamp hours and 321 milliwatt hours. So 400 is probably a bit too heavy. And checking to see if there's anything left, which I think there might be, with 100 milliamps. So we're at 1 volt, but alright, I'll keep that running and see what happens. Continuing at 100 milliamps, increased its yield to 162, so that's 530 milliamp hours from the previous 400 milliamp run to this one. So it's still only round about that, but it doesn't really handle a great load. And it's slowly bouncing back. I don't know what it'll go to, probably stay at 0.9 or something. So I think I'll give it one more charge, see what the milliamp hours are at, and swap it over to run these. Okay, back with, this is the 60th discharge on the cell in 6 hours. It ran for on 100 milliamps. Total 602 milliamp hours and 582 milliwatt hours. So maybe doing something like stressing it out like the other nights with 400 milliamps has actually done something. Because that's its record so far. So I might keep charging to 100. I got 40 to go. 40 more days. Noticing the bounce back is not as good though, 0.7, so it's well drained
probably be no zinc on the negative sides at all almost. A fraction, but it won't have that voltage, I guess. Alright, I'll continue charging. Alright, the cell's been tested for 75 charges. It started to lose power around about the 68th charge and discharge, and started dropping heaps more. The average voltage is going up to 1.4 volts on the run. Started off at the very first charge. Oh, is that the right one? Charge 1 here. Average voltage was on the first charge 0.8. The point it's failing, it's not the chemistry. If you can see this side here, see that flaking? It's starting to peel where I put the copper tape, but they aren't all doing that, so I think that one was a bit knackered before I started. I'll show you one which is probably going to fail anyway, due to see how it's like that. That one there will fail, but that side sort of, that will probably fail on that side as well, through that under there. So that was a bad coating. There's no conductivity from this side to this side of the plate, so that's what I think's wrong with the cell. I'm going to pull this out and replace it with this one, which is good. That's a good plating. It's completely plated. Hopefully I can peel those pads off and stick them back onto this plate and put it back in here and see what happens. It's probably the construction, getting too fancy with it. You could probably use mild steel plates and nickel coat them and it would be fine, I reckon. I'm going to try a mild steel plate setup. It will save using ink and also copper plating. You won't have to do it, you'll just have to just nickel plate completely. So I'll glove up, get that stripped down, and then we'll check this plate out properly. Okay, we have multiple failures actually on the positive plate of the plating. So we're back to bare plastic through here, up here, through here and everywhere else. And that's on both sides. Some of it was stuck. These are pretty stuck. These are the surfaces that were attached to this plate. So it peeled it off. I'm gonna reuse these pads anyway. The extra little nickel here won't hurt, I don't think. The micro porous overalls held up really well. The rubber bands are good. I cut them off, but when they dry out they'll start crumbling. So this is the edges. It's just sort of stuck in there, but the plating failed, or it's due to the charge. The negative sides aren't sort of like this, what I know of. The potassium hydroxide shouldn't be etching into the nickel. Maybe the nickel plating wasn't thick in areas and allowed the electrolyte to get in and under, perhaps around the edges, or any other defect I had in the area. See, those parts are sort of held up there nice, they don't come off. The little connectors and everything cleaned up pretty good. I'll just give them a sand. So I'll set up the next electrode and see how that fares in this cell before we continue.
And I've actually plated a few of these already. So I reckon if you use microwave oven steel cases as the electrode plates and sand them down and nickel plate them, might be better. I'll try that too. I think I'm going to anyway. It won't be much dearer. It will be less time in making the electrodes. Just cut them out, stick them in the nickel solution, plate it, and be done with it. Don't have to copper plate it. Maybe the copper plating comes off and you have to be a little hole through the nickel plating, or porous. That's probably not even solid. It's probably like micro pores going through there due to the plating. So I'm pretty wrapped with the micro porous overalls. They held up in 6 mole of potassium hydroxide. And we have some zinc oxide in there somehow. Maybe when I was pulling the cell apart and it just collected up there like that. Righty, got the cell back together. It's in there. I put it on charge. It was initially it took 1.9 amps. With the other cell it was dropping down to 1 amp going through the cell, and then sort of dropping right down to 500 milliamps by about now. So we're still at 1.4. So I presume the negative sides are not affected as much as the positive side plate. So we'll see how it goes on charge today. Charge it up for as long as I can today, and I'll get back. I managed to stick the stipple sponge together. The only way I could stick it together was hot glue gun it. I tried a hot plate, but it smells like couch foam burning. So it just burns and goes to powder. So it's stuck together, it fits on the plates like so. They're going to conductive ink it. It won't matter around those join lines. They'll probably get inked anyway, and whatever gets plated, but that's a nice porous sort of mesh we want. It will be the negative side, I think, because the positive side will maybe disintegrate this. I'm not sure. I'll try both maybe. So that would sit on one of those plates like so. Now we're down to 900 milliamps and 19 minutes so far. Okay, back with a 4-hour charge after replacing the positive electrode. That one's probably going to do the same as the other one, I'd imagine. And it's off charge. And starting 100 milliamp test again. It's at 2 volts, but it's dropped pretty quick. I'm surprised it's still working. The pads with the nickel oxyhydroxide were still intact. So we just have to wait for them to attach themselves to the collector, I guess. It's a shame they don't sort of last in the liquid. You'd think the nickel wouldn't like melt away, but probably down there. See, there's some black patches and stuff. Maybe it gets in through there, starts detaching itself, and maybe the higher voltage is too high for it. Could come in through that seam. Maybe they need to be plated longer. I don't know. I did notice the other one, the copper tape is actually intact. It was just everything else flaking off it, which is different. I thought the potassium hydroxide ate away at copper. So we'll let this run, see what we get. I'll give it another 25 charges and then post the video. I don't really have much time lately due to work. First discharge after the new positive cell's been replaced. So we ran for 4 hours and 14 on a 4 hour and 13 minute charge. 423 milliamp hours and 423 milliwatt hours. Average voltage is sitting at 1. But the recovery is a bit lower on the new electrode at the moment. Still higher than originally it would have been on the first run. It was sitting at 1 volt after 75 charges. It would bounce back to 1 volt. So I'll charge it up for 7 hours or something tomorrow while I'm at work and see how she runs. It should be actually increasing. If it doesn't, I'll get back and then I'll probably post a video if it's not performing. Alright, charge number 80, or discharge number 80 I should say. Cells 500 milliamp hours with the plastic coated nickel plating. I'm going to substitute the plastic one with a mild steel plate, nickel coated. That little line is where I raised it up out of the liquid. It's still coated with nickel, just got darker patches through there on both sides. So it turned out quite well. It's nice and smooth. That's where it's not plated. That's where the alligator clip was. So I'll post this video. So the cell's around about 500 milliamp hours, not too bad really. And the failure was on the positive side. This coating coming off. I don't think the coating should react with the charge, but you never know. So I'm going to repeat the experiment with the middle one. It's going to increase the weight, but they're just collectors. They don't actually play a part much except for collecting the current. I'll post the results of the charge. Number 76 is where I replaced the electrode, and it was at 423 there on that charge, and started raising again. I guess the coated pads had to bond to the surface again of the cell. I think the negative side ones are holding out. They're pretty good. That's the old plastic, which the ink didn't bind too well anyway. So I've got replacement ones with the nickel coated copper mesh. But I'll give this a run, the metal one, with those pads, see if it's still 500 milliamp hours or if it increases. It probably shouldn't increase, and hopefully it doesn't disintegrate like that one does. So thanks for watching.